Hello, firstly thanks for checking out this video on this brand new Dreamcast game, which I believe is probably the first brand new Dreamcast game of this year. This is the Textorcist, the story of Bibbia, and this was a game that's released on Steam back on the 14th of February 2019. It was developed by Morbidware and published by Head Up Games. This particular version on the Dreamcast has been published by GameFairy.io, which is a website where you can get limited edition releases primarily on modern day consoles like the PS4 or the Switch. So this is a first foray into a Dreamcast game. Should it be successful, I believe that they will look into further Dreamcast development. This is quite an interesting game, really. Interesting in the way that it mixes genres. This mixes the sort of bullet hell genre with almost like a typing simulator, really. So what I mean by that is that to defeat your foes in this game, you have to type out words that come up on the screen. Now these can be either done with the controller or the Dreamcast keyboard. It's quite an interesting thing. So if you've got a Dreamcast keyboard kicking around, it's quite a cool little thing that you can plug that in and use that. Of course you can use a controller as well, which is my chosen method for how I'm going to play this game. And basically how it controls on this, the analog stick does your moving about, and when it comes to the battle mode, you can use the left and right triggers. Basically the word will come up on the screen and you'll be prompted to spell out letter by letter by using the L trigger on the R trigger. It seems quite simple, but in actual fact it can be quite difficult, certainly when you're in the heat of the moment in a fight. And as you'll no doubt see here, I'm typing extremely slowly throughout the footage of this video, so I do apologise if that does frustrate you, but it is only the second time that I've played this section through, so you have to bear with me. And I think practice makes perfect, certainly with this game. So you start with randomised, randomise the selection from the triggers themselves, so it's not always the same, and it's quite a nice little touch there. I found that I would sometimes hit the wrong trigger, even with like the simplest words. It gives you a real sense of urgency trying to get these words typed out as quickly as possible whilst watching the action that's going on the screen. And that's the bullet hell element of the game, that you have various projectiles that are heading towards your general vicinity in the time that you're trying to sprout these words from your book to finish off your foe. You get a sort of tutorial with this first character that you meet here, who's lying about his sister being well. In actual fact, he wants to shift you for some cash, but he's dispatched quickly enough. And then the battles get bigger and longer and more intense the further you go into the game. And it's quite a nice sort of easing in. And the game never really feels unfair with this, really. It's whatever you feel is always, it's your fault if you do mess it up, and it does give you multiple chances to redeem yourself by you drop your book and you have to quickly try and retrieve it to continue the battle itself. The controls are quite snappy and intuitive, and they don't feel like they're sort of sluggish or lagging or anything like that. Unlike your enemies, really. I suppose some of the enemies, like most bullet hell shooters that you have examples of sort of slow down when the projectile's being fired at you, but this is quite a godsend in this scenario because you can give yourself enough time to avoid the enemies, and it's a nice touch that you don't have a timer on the words that you've got to spell out, that you can sort of back off, avoid the enemies, come back where it's a safer point on the playing field to carry on typing out your word. So I did quite appreciate that, and when I first bought the game and unpacked it, I thought, oh god, I hope there's not going to be a case you've got to spell out a word as quickly as possible. Certainly you have got an air of urgency to it, but it's not in the sense that you will start losing your life if you do decide to evasively play the game rather than sort of going all guns blazing, so to speak. On the topic of the controls though, one thing that I did find was quite an odd thing that the developers put in was that the B button is the proceed button and the A button is the back button. Now, this initially caused me some frustration in the fact that when I needed them for some elements in the game, like accessing the computer or such like, even pausing the game, if you want to quit the game, you press the A button, or if you want to continue, it's the B button. And I quit once, so I had to come back into the game again. And more frustratingly was when I finished one of the levels, I pressed the A button rather than the B button, which the B button would be proceed and the A button would be retry the level. so I had to redo the level again. That was quite annoying, but only a small thing really in the grand scheme of it. But one thing that does add to the frustration level, and that is the loading times. That this game does take a long time to load, and it's very small sections of the game that you play, and then you encounter another load time. I should imagine this is probably to counter the fact that the Dreamcast is a very low powered machine by today's standards, and trying to fit everything into its probably minuscule amount of memory was quite a difficult task, bearing in mind that this game wasn't built for the Dreamcast originally. It was built as a game for Steam. So what the developers have done for this is they've built it from the ground up again for these lower spec Sega machines. And what they've done here is fantastic work, and it's only a tiny little gripe that the loading times are quite long, certainly rivaling Half-Life on the Dreamcast if you've ever played that. So you are spending quite a lot of time looking at a loading screen. But it's quite intense on the disk drive as well. That you can hear it it's whirring away, trying to load and seek from the disk. But again, I should imagine this is all part and parcel of trying to fit this game onto a machine that's over 20 years old now. So it's only a small thing, not really a big deal. But you just got to be aware of this, that if you do buy this game, that you will be seeing quite a few loading screens, I think. It's worth mentioning with the loading times that I've actually cut them in half on the footage that I've shown you here, just to save continuity, because I'm playing on the real Dreamcast hardware here. So as I do with all my videos, I just want to show you the experience of what it would be actually looking like on your console, rather than running through some HDMI upscaler or whatever that other YouTubers do. But so everything in Ray's room here is sort of context sensitive. You can interact with it. Some of it you need for particular missions as well, i.e. the phone and the journal and stuff, and everything involves you typing out the words that are required to access the items, which is quite cool. But story wise, the game doesn't take itself too seriously at all, as evident with the interactions between Ray and the NPCs that litter the game world. There's actually quite a bit of crude humour, and for a priest, he's actually got quite a potty mouth, to be honest. One area where the game particularly excels is its visual presentation. It's not immediately apparent when you boot it up, but it's actually really quite charming. It's colourful, it's well animated, and reminds me very much of maybe like a game like Earthbound on a Super Nintendo in the way that it handles itself. The levels are quite varied and deep, and there's loads of different environments. They are quite small, but there's certainly detail packed into all of them. And everything is very well done. There's an element of sort of hand drawn to them, which is absolutely lovely. The music in this game is another strong point for the Textorcist. Created by Ghost, there's a fair few trance-like tracks in this game which really suit it down to the ground. The sound effects on the game has fit it quite well, and there's a fair few littered throughout the game. Just little incidental things like doors opening, phones ringing, various things like that, which add to the atmosphere in the game overall. So it's a plus in that category as well. With all this being said, what's our takeaway from the Textorcist on the Dreamcast? Well, I would strongly recommend it to anyone who's looking for new software for their console, and looking for something perhaps a little bit different. Certainly the Dreamcast has been littered with bullet hell shooters in the past, but this is not strictly a bullet hell shooter. This is just mixing genres together. It's just as much a almost adventure platformer as it is a shoot 'em up game. Throwing in the element of obviously typing in your attacks as well really makes it very unique and fits in very well with the portfolio of other software for the machine that is well renowned for being different. So you can get it on GameFairy.io, as I said in the beginning of the video, and the 666 version of it, which is limited to 666 copies, will set you back €39.99, which I don't think is unreasonable. The case is very similar to the Resident Evil Code Veronica Japanese special edition, to be honest. It certainly harks back to that when it arrived, and would almost compare the two together if I could bother to unpack it. But I digress. There is a standard version of the game as well if you just don't want to be flashy, and you can get it for €29.99, but that one doesn't come with the banging soundtrack CD, so certainly for the extra €10 I'd recommend you picking up the 666 version of it. I don't know whether this game will expand out to other retailers, online shops like Josh Prod or Video Games New York or Play Asia. One would hope that it does, because it deserves all the exposure that it can get. And it's It is a great game and it deserves all the success that comes its way. I really hope that Head Up and Game Theory decide to venture out into the wilderness of Dreamcast publishing once more. That would be absolutely great. So you know, in the plus side of things, the graphics are great, the sound's great, and it plays pretty darn well as well. Downsides, perhaps the loading times are a bit excessive, and you know, the button configuration for the menus is a bit of a bind, but once you get used to these things, then it's a lot of fun to be had with this game, and certainly for the price that it is. It's been built, you know, from the ground up for the Dreamcast, and that's a really cool thing in this day and age, rather than sort of porting over like old Neo Geo games or stuff that we've seen in the past and genres that are getting quite tired now. So yeah, seek it out, grab it, you know, like this video, subscribe if you want to, and follow our page on Facebook, which is Dreamcast Today. And hopefully I'll catch you on another episode. See you soon, bye.